Nobody saw the driver's hatch move. We were all buttoned up, eyes fixed on the Shuri Line when the radio went static. By the time the medics reached the wreck of Hell's Belle, the engine was cold, but the steel was screaming. They didn't find a crew in those seats. They found a hand fused directly into the locking lug of a hatch that was dogged shut from the inside. The skin didn't just touch the metal. It was becoming the metal. The brass told us it was a localized heat weld from a Japanese kinetic round. But the medics? They heard the breathing coming from inside the solid steel. The file was closed. The frequency was not. April 14, 1945. Southern Okinawa. The 754th Tank Battalion was moving to support the 6th Marines at the Shuri Line. Among them was Hell's Belle, an M4A3 Sherman that had survived 3 direct hits in the Philippines. This wasn't a ghost story. It was an after-action report. At 2 o'clock, the Belle went dark. No radio, no engine flare. When the recovery team found her at dawn, she was sitting in a perfect circle of dead grass, completely untouched by enemy fire. The kicker? Every hatch was dog-tight from the inside. Not a single latch was forced, and yet the internal temperature of the hull was recorded at a steady 32 degrees. In the middle of a tropical Pacific heat wave, 1:30. The Shuri Line is burning, but the sector around Hell's Belle is dead silent. Too silent. The rain has stopped, and the air is thick enough to chew. Inside the Belle, they are buttoned up tight. Standard Procedure 101. If you lose power in a hot zone, you lock it down. But this isn't standard. This is the 754th's private nightmare. Davis, the loader, is the first to notice the smell. It isn't cordite or diesel. It's the phantom scent of cheap, stale tobacco, the kind his grandfather smoked back in Kansas. Then the temperature plummets. In 10 seconds, their own breath is fogging the vision slits. 1:58. The first microhook hits. Davis hears the hatch wheel begin to turn. Not from the outside, from inside the solid steel hull plating. The metal groans as the wheel spins in reverse, unlocking a hatch that cannot be unlocked. 2 o'clock, point of no return. The intercom hums to life, but nobody is touching the mic. It isn't a voice that comes through, it's a vibration. A low, vibrating drone that starts in their teeth and fills the tank. This is the second microhook, engineering the primal fear response. The sound isn't from the radio, it's from the armor itself. The hull begins to traverse, not the turret, the whole 30-ton tank, spinning in a silent, impossible circle. Davis sees the gunner, a veteran of Guadalcanal, start clawing at his own face, screaming that he can see them. He can see the dead frequency. 2:11. The screaming is cut short. The Belle is no longer a machine. It's a vacuum, consuming everything: sound, light, hope. For 11 perfect, terrifying seconds before the grid goes dark. The file was closed. The frequency was not. At 6 o'clock, the recovery team from the 754th reached the coordinates. They expected a burnout or a mechanical failure. What they found was a 30-ton block of ice in the middle of a tropical ridge. Lieutenant Miller, the lead investigator, noted that the exterior of Hell's Belle was coated in a fine, crystalline frost that refused to melt. Even under the direct Pacific sun, the mud around the tracks had been flash frozen into glass. But the real problem was the silence. Miller hammered on the hull with a heavy wrench, no shouting from inside. No movement. The tank was, buttoned up, locked so tight from the interior that the recovery crew had to call for an acetylene torch team to breach the steel. When the sparks finally bit into the driver's hatch, the metal didn't just melt, it bled. A thick, dark, saltwater residue seeped from the cut, smelling of deep ocean brine. When the hatch finally fell away, the seat was empty. The driver, the gunner, the loader, gone. 5 sets of dog tags were found, sitting in a perfect, undisturbed circle on the turret floor. Then Miller saw the grip. It wasn't a severed hand. It was a physical manifestation of the driver's final moments. A pale, 5-fingered human hand was seamlessly fused into the iron locking lug of the hatch. The skin didn't stop at the metal. The pores of the flesh transitioned into the pits of the cast steel. It was as if the man had been molecularly bonded to the machine during that 11-second frequency spike. Miller tried to pry it loose. The steel shattered like glass, but the hand wouldn't budge. The official report filed by the War Department listed the crew as missing in action, presumed captured. They blamed the frozen hull on a freak chemical reaction from a Japanese experimental cooling gas shell. But they didn't explain the hand. And they didn't explain why. 2 days later, the 754th received an order to weld the Belle's hatches shut and dump the entire 30-ton tank into the deep water off the Naha coast. They didn't want to study it. They wanted it at the bottom of the ocean. The Navy divers at Naha didn't talk. They just watched the Hell's Belle slip into the black water of the trench. But they say that on certain nights, when the Pacific is flat and the radio air is thin, the salvage crews still pick up a signal. It's a low-frequency hum, vibrating at the same resonance as cast iron armor. And if you listen long enough through the static, you can hear the sound of 5 men, still buttoned up, still breathing, waiting for someone to let the light in. They weren't captured by the enemy. They were claimed by the machine. The file was closed. The frequency was not.